Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of our Mentor Masterclass series. Today we have with us Nidhi Mittal, who is the head of marketing for Tata Advanced Systems in its cybersecurity practice. Now, Nidhi has had a very interesting journey so far. She's never been a typical marketer. She holds an international MBA from Harvard Business School and comes with over 15 years of professional experience. Now, after working with several companies throughout the world in places such as the US, Australia, Dubai, and in India, in which she's held senior roles in operations, she's taken the plunge into following her passion, which is in marketing. Today, we're going to be talking about marketing and branding and how it's changed as a result of COVID, and also how we as individuals can utilize personal branding to leverage, to improve our careers. Nidhi, thank you for your time in speaking with us today, and it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks, Nasser. It's a pleasure for me for organizing this and inviting me over to be part of this platform and share whatever experience I have with your audience.
Yeah.
So, thanks for inviting me over.
Sure. So, Nidhi, I've just given a very brief intro into your journey so far. Could you sort of delve a little more deeper into your background and your professional journey so far?
Sure, Nasser. So, my journey has, like you just mentioned, that I'm not a typical marketer. I think that's where I would really start from. That not just not being a typical marketer, I have been a very unconventional professional throughout my life. So when I started off my career, probably I was from those one of those confused lots as to what really to pursue. So by virtue of my good luck, I landed up into operations and service delivery as an area of work, and I really scaled up there for almost over close to a decade. But and I always enjoyed working. So working has been something that I'm really passionate about. I just don't do it as part of my bread and butter. I'm really passionate about any role that I'm involved in, any kind of company I'm engaged with. So that really helped me scale up when I was working in the operations and service delivery industry. But I think I had this deep inclination towards shifting myself towards the creative side of the business. So the roles which I was doing earlier did allow me to apply some bit of creativity, let's say within my teams or within my existing roles, but that was very, very limited. So at the peak of my career, which is something very unconventional, I took up this decision to kind of start to transition from the operations cycle to becoming a marketer, or let's say a sales and marketing area. So if you look at it, it's a kind of a progression, which I say that, from operations to pre-sales and sales, and then being into the marketing. So, you kind of understand the ground nitty-gritties of an organization, to then knowing how to pre-sell and sell the stuff, and then to know that how to message that out to the audience, right? So at the decade, almost at the end of a decade, I took this decision to quit my typical career of operations, and I started off my own brand. So there was a particular startup which I ran for around 3 years. More than a startup, it was more like an adventure period for me. It was called Smart You, and my idea was about setting up something where we are able to personally brand ourselves in a complete 360-degree totality, right? So I realized that being an individual, we really do not give that much of an importance and weightage to our own personal brand, in terms of even promoting ourselves on, let's say, LinkedIn, building up our resumes, or anything that we do creatively otherwise in our life. We cannot, it's all jumbled up everywhere. So when I'm doing, when I'm trying to know an individual, or even if I'm applying for a job, I personally would like to know that individual completely. Like, there is a philosophy of Toyota that skills can be built up, but we need to hire the talent. And talent is beyond the technical or that specific skill that you're looking for, right? So this startup idea that I had was a very product focused idea, where we wanted to convert everybody into, let's say, a simple domain. I wanted to get away with the visiting cards, get away with the resumes. And if tomorrow you ping me and say, who's Nidhi Mittal? I'll just say, go to www.nidhimittal.com, and you will know everything about me. And when I say everything, that does not limit you to like the introduction that you just gave, that Nidhi has worked in these many countries and these many roles. You would be able to understand far more about me as an individual and take a better decision to either hire me or not. So that was my 3 years of startup journey. But somehow, maybe we can have a later talk on it at a length, that we did do a lot of wrong things, some of the decisions which probably did not fell in our favor. And I still call it a successful period because it actually helped me now know what not to do in a startup. Everybody would be ending up telling you that what you should be doing, this is what is right, this is number one, number two. But there will be very less and few people who will actually tell you that, buddy, don't do these things. So that's something that I learned. And because I'm a very firm believer of taking a risk then regretting something, I always give an importance to risk then regret. So I think that happened for around 3-4 years, and then the adventure was lasting pretty long. I think it was time to come back from the jungle and live in the city. So that's when I started engaging with a lot of startups, a lot of upcoming startups who were looking for either an operational support or some kind of a marketing support. So I picked up small assignments, and that was like a really, really good starting step for me. While working in an agency, let's say, and trying to set up their operations gave me a very good insight in terms of the marketing creative piece that I was looking to get, and also utilize my 10 years of operational skills to set them up. So that collectively made me a kind of a better marketer. And then eventually I ended up landing into organizations like a cybersecurity startup where I work, and then now with Tata Advanced Systems. So I think whatever I have done throughout my career has been more of the practical learning rather than anything which was prescribed to me or given to me as read and do. So that's why it's been very, very interesting and very realistic.
Interesting. And before we actually get into the more marketing detailed questions, I'd like to sort of expand on a particular topic that you mentioned, which is about your startup, in which you help with personal branding and promotion. So, how important do you think personal branding is going to be for any individual in the next 3 to 4 years, when they are, even if they're not looking to be get on the entrepreneurial path, if they're even trying to go in the professional journey, then do you think that recruiters would sort of start to look more into their actual digital presence in terms of sort of how much content do they put out on a regular basis, and how interested are they about these topics, and will they sort of look a little more past the traditional resume, and will is building like an online presence for yourself as a personal brand going to be a large part of how people market themselves in the future?
Absolutely, absolutely, Nesar. And I don't think so. 4 to 5 years, it is the need of the hour. Even today, I mean, we are living in a typically digital world all the time. We are hooked to this mobile all the time, and everybody who's searching you. And look at the current situation for the past 4 5 months, where we just cannot even meet an individual. Where do I hunt for that person? And it doesn't mean that hiring has stopped or any personal interaction has stopped. So personal branding is not something which is a new concept. It has been there from the ages. I mean, it's always been there. If you look at the political world, or if you look at the entertainment world or anywhere, the only difference which has happened is that the mechanics of it has changed. So if I'm a politician, I'm probably giving a speech earlier, right? But today, if I'm a politician, I have to throw my opinion on Twitter as well, right? So it is not that that's a new concept that people has to adapt to it, but it has always been there. And I think today, looking at the amount of content and looking at the kind of competition we are part of, so 10 years back, if I was applying for a role, maybe I was just competing, let's say, with 50 odd people or 10. But today, if I'm applying for a role, I might be competing with 1,000 people or maybe more. So we have to really understand, and that too maybe with millennials, right? If I'm in, let's say, in a mid age in area, and I'm competing with millennials who have come from Harvard, they might be sitting next to me and applying for it. So it is very, very important for us to understand that the differentiating factor of who we are. Personal branding is not about the content that you're putting online or on which platform you're putting. It is about letting people know that who I am. Like, I use Instagram as also one of the mechanisms to put up my poetry, my photography, or any thought which is my own creation, right? So tomorrow, there are many organizations we are aware of who are who have third party or an agency to actually go back and understand the digital footprint of a potential candidate. So when they're doing it, so any impression that I'm leaving on Insta or Twitter or otherwise on my Facebook, that will actually collectively build up my brand in front of the hiring manager, right? So that is one part of it. And in terms of second as well, it's a positive thing. You are getting an opportunity to be outspoken, to let your thoughts be reflected to people. Not everything is about monetizing, right? Not everything is about becoming fame or having fame or popularity. It is about sharing the good thoughts or anything that you have, which you want to what which you want people to see, and you want that to be reached out. So you might not even know, but in turn you're helping somebody. Like recently we have seen there is a lot of talk on social media around mental health and depression, right? And it was flooded. Like LinkedIn was surprisingly flooded. And I have even observed very, very senior people of the organizations at the CEO layer of top companies clearly promoting it out that I am there to talk to you. Buddy, don't take a step of doing a suicide or doing whatever. Reach out to me, ping me on LinkedIn. So that's a personal human brand that you showed, right? Nobody knows you otherwise that way, that you're so approachable. So I think personal branding is not something 3 4 years away. It is right here. It was always there. You just have to choose the right platform which you want to, and you have to put up your own voice. Don't try to be a copy paste. Nobody is asking you to put up every day there is a feed on LinkedIn that you have to do. If you are looking at increasing the viewership, if you're looking at monetizing follower, then that's a business side of it, right? But if you just want yourself to be there, just like you interact in your social circle with your friends, with your family, consider social media something like that, right? And just do it.
And one thing that I'd like to add here is, so when you speak about putting out content and creating that brand for yourself, I mean, no matter what topic that whatever it is, the topic that you're interested in, whether it be content marketing, digital marketing, or HR, whatever it is, I think when you put out that content for everyone to see, that also helps you think better and think more clearly, and get your thoughts in order. So I think that's an additional sort of upside to it. And of course, like you said, we're not competing with 50 people anymore. We're competing with thousands of people, and you have to figure out a way to stand out from the crowd, right? So absolutely, personal branding is a must in today's age.
Yeah.
Now, moving a little bit more towards the marketing side of it, Nidhi, now you've spent a big portion of your career in the operations side, and you moved on to marketing because that was where your passion was in. So, what have you observed over the past maybe 7 to 8 years in marketing, and how what have you seen as the evolution of digital marketing and marketing as a whole, and what sort of trends have you observed over the past 8 9 years?
Okay. So like I said, Nisar, I'll be more like sharing my practical experience rather than something which is well read off from the books or otherwise. So if you talk about the evolution of marketing, I think the marketing per se has not evolved, right? The basics of marketing still remains the same, and that is all about conveying the right brand message to the maximum audience. I mean, if I understand it as a marketer and also as a consumer, that has been the very basic of marketing. Like I always say, marketing is about telling and sales is about selling. So that has been traditionally the basic of marketing. And if you go back to the times where we did not had any digital presence, we used to get these pamphlets in the newspaper, right? So again, the same idea, right? Have a colorful one, just put up a yellow and a pink one, put it to the larger audience. So the marketing concept has not evolved that as such. What has evolved is the consumers and the technology, the mindset of the consumers, which has evolved over time because of the kind of exposure of products and services that is coming through, and also the evolution of the technology as to how their reach towards those products and services is changing. So the what part has not shifted, that what we need to do. The how part has shifted. That is something which has evolved. That how do we still maintain that basic and still put up the right message to the largest audience? And it all depends on which industry you're working on. Are you in a B2B? Are you in a B2C? Are you doing a product, or you are into a very, very typical service type? So, and I always think as a marketer, before putting across anything as a marketer, I put myself in a consumer's shoes. I mean, that's something that we always do whenever we conceptualize anything in our organization. That if I was a consumer, what is it that I would want to see? So, let me just give you one example, which is a very typical one. If I talk about the ads of Coke, so a brand which even if they stop advertising, we will still buy it, right? Because it's synonymous in our head to cola now. So they don't even also evolved in terms of technology, using technology in their marketing. So you might witness a billboard where they have used some kind of, artificial intelligence of enabling of, flowing of Coke from a bottle to a glass. And that, increases that thirstness in your mindset. So they have adapted to that as an evolution, but the message still remains the same. Or let's look at Lenskart as one of the examples. You still have an power in your eye. You still need to buy a glass. Now, what they're trying to do is they still have stores where you go and you purchase. But what they're doing is they're giving you this, a virtual reality kind of a platform on the mobile or on the laptop that you put up your photograph, try it out a 360-degree way, and most of the conversion might still not happen there, but people enjoy it. So they're kind of setting up that differentiation, and they're trying to evolve with time. As a typical consumer, I might still like it, and there would be some risk in my mind that should I order or still go to the store, but they still generated my interest towards it, right? So I think that is something which has been happening. The competition has increased so much that the neuroscience of a consumer is also something that we really need to keep in mind. I mean, today, even to buy a simple thing like a pen or let's say a biscuit or a chips, I am flooded with content. I'm flooded with variety of stuff in front of me. And the moment something, and the moment marketing actually confuses me more. Like, for example, when this incident of Maggie happened, when everybody was, there was this question raised on the quality of Maggie. Every noodle brand started to talk about safety rather than the taste. So the evolution was not around, how to market differently. The idea was what is the consumer neuroscience has shifted to. Now they are not looking at the taste of the noodle. Now they are more worried about the safety, whether it's a good noodle, it's a safe noodle or not, right? Something like that happened. So when we are flooding our audience with so much of content, and interestingly with every age group. So initially, I don't think, maybe in my age or I don't even in yours, we as kids, we were not the decision makers. I was never, in a position to make a choice that, okay, this is the clothes that I want, this is the shoes that I want. But now kids are their own decision makers. So we have a completely new consumer base, which is kids, and they are hooked to the, tablets or mobiles. They are watching these ads. They're getting attracted towards those virtual reality augmented stuff. Even for a car, they might recommend their father that let's go for this one. So all these things being infused into the marketing, and to a larger section of the group, which still might not be able to take that route. I mean, not every organization can go down the route of AI and virtual augmentation. So they have to understand that how do they still keep the combination of evolution of consumer and technology and still keep the basics. So marketing is just an art. Everything else is, I would say, a skill, and everything else that is happening is the evolution, but the marketing still remains the art.
True. And so just to sum up, so I think one of the main things you brought up, especially in your Lenskart example, was a lot of companies are now slowly evolving into an omnipresent marketing strategy in which they're not just targeting online or just offline. They're sort of using a mix of both. So that's a really interesting observation. And yeah, of course, in terms of just purely the psychology of the consumer and what their pain points are. So at one time the pain point could have been taste, but the other time it was safety, like you mentioned. So it all depends on the consumer. Now, coming to sort of a little more into digital marketing now as a practice and as a field. Now, what have you seen, or how would you describe the importance of digital marketing in today's age to companies? And how should a company go about in selecting the right digital channels for them to promote their business?
Right. So that's always a very, very tricky, thing for organizations to do. And I've been seeing this from the time of the startup to the time of working with a brand like Tata right now. See, digital marketing, there is no escape from it now, right? So you can from it as long, but there you will eventually, whether you are in a startup capacity or a large organization, you will have to adapt or adopt digital marketing as part of your marketing agenda. So that's something there is no escape from. Now digital marketing is an expensive yet the fastest way to reach your audience. That is where our entire audience is lying right now. Even whether it's urban or rural areas, everybody is right now digitally savvy. That is how the economy is moving. That's how the countries are targeting, to equip more and more individuals with the power of mobile and internet. So we have to be in sync with that, and we understand. Now it might be an expensive journey, but that's again, there's no two talk ways about it. That is the fastest way to reach your audience. But one thing we have to really make sure of is that we have to do it very, very smartly. It's not something that if tomorrow, and that is what I was saying is the biggest challenge for everybody, is that if tomorrow you see that there are these 10 platforms available to put up, let's say, 10 different types of content, nobody is asking you to be on those 10 platforms, right? You have to understand that you do not have to be everywhere and then start compromising on the quality. So being digitally available or doing digital marketing, you still do not have the luxury to compromise on the quality. And digital marketing is also very, very prone to something that once you leave a footprint on it, it's there to stay. It's not like a billboard you put up and next day you can remove it off and nobody will know that it was there. So whatever footprint you're leaving on digital market, digital platforms, is something where the quality will speak forever. So one of the most important things that every organization should keep in mind, and we always do that, and we are doing right now in our organization as well, is that choose only the right tools that that are required, which fits your goals and you can sustain. So choosing the right tool which you can sustain and you can do a good job there, this is what you should be doing when we talk about digital marketing. So if LinkedIn and Twitter are the only two tools which you think are required right now for my B2B business, just be there. Nobody is asking you to start Instagram, be on Tumblr, be on even TikTok, be everywhere. Nobody is asking you. It won't help you. Be on those tools which are really relevant, which you can be able to sustain with good quality. And always, that's a ground rule which we always follow, is that content and consumer are the king. In fact, content will always be the king. So break down your content on these platforms into different target segments. Like, for example, what we do in Tata at the moment right now is that we have, and it's a very, a recent journey. Like, we just started marketing in our division just almost 9-10 months back. So when we started off, we had, from the very start, we thought that, okay, we are now building up a new platform, a new audience base. So let's bucket our content for the digital platform in some segments. So we have three buckets that we primarily focus on. The first one bucket is about promoting our services, where we talk about what are the key cybersecurity services that we have. We talk about our, the goods and the bads about it, how we can help the organizations, and everything related to a service type. The second bucket that we have is about thought leadership, because everybody wants to know, everybody wants to see the faces behind those brands. So the second bucket that we focus around is talking about the thought leadership, establishing that of Tata Advanced System. And the third bucket is about talking about our capabilities. Like when I said a skill and a talent. So the skill is the services type, but the talent is about the people. So we have the third bucket where we talk about our people in terms of, the certifications they might have taken or any kind of achievements they have done. So there is this bucket where we put our content regarding our people. So we try to use the digital marketing tools to create that personalizations, and you have to have a very keen eye on whichever tool you select, because they're also at the end of the day businesses, right? So they are coming up with a lot of new features all the time, and some of them are definitely like really really useful, and it's very important for you to encash and like utilize them at the first go. So for example, LinkedIn started up putting up polls. We very recently started using polls on our handles, and it gave us a really good kick. I mean, our new follower base was kind of, it became steady, because right now everybody is throwing so much content on LinkedIn. So our new follower base wasn't kind of really rising. So we started incorporating using polls, which was a LinkedIn feature, into our digital marketing strategy. And suddenly we saw a spike in our new followers. So I think, just to answer and sum it up, is all about the same thing which I said. Choose the right tools which you can sustain. Don't have a LinkedIn, a Twitter handle for 0 followers. I've seen many organizations. They will have, let's say, 50,000 on LinkedIn, and you click on their Twitter, it's like 50 followers. So what is the impression that you're trying to create? Why do you even need to be there? And put up, a very very personalized and quality content on whichever platform you choose.
So to sum up, like you said, so you focus your efforts into the platforms that you know which work for you and that you know that your audience uses, and double down on your efforts and put out quality content on a consistent basis. So consistency
Absolutely.
is a key feature that you mentioned, and that's like a big takeaway here. Now,
Consistency and sustainability, because most of the companies I've seen, and that's you can see that everywhere, even with big brands and startups. You will see at the they will have these all the links given: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Insta, Tumblr, everything will be there. And when you click, which, like, I'm a very positive stalker, so I always visit the social handles of any organization I go. And the moment you land on those pages, some of them would not be linked, they are broken links. Some of them would not have followers, 0 followers and all. So if you cannot sustain, then don't have it. Rather than creating a wrong impression, use them when you are in a position to, build up content for that.
yeah, and another key point to highlight that you mentioned was about how you mentioned you had different sort of posts for thought leadership, different posts for different other sorts of aspects. So basically, what you were trying to do is really cultivate that digital brand identity and brand image of Tata, and which also leads me to my next question, which is, so what does the word brand really mean to you as a marketer, and how do you think that a brand that a company should go about in cultivating its brand image on social media and other digital channels?
Right. So I would say brand is like a surname, right? So if you say, when you say a brand, it should resonate. It should leave something in your mind. There has to be that power of resonation of something. So when we talk about Tata, it stands for trust, which we see. When in being inside Tata, I've observed that for a year now, that Tata stands out for trust, right? Apple stands out for class. No matter, we have so much of competition in the mobile industry, but from the time that when I first purchased my Apple, and I'm still using Samsung, I'm not using Apple, but still, Apple stands for class. You look at Cadbury, right? It talks about affection. It does not talks about the taste of the chocolate or the sweetness. It talks all the advertising that they do, anything that they talk about their brand, whether it's an ad they will put up during Rakhi or Diwali or in general, it only talks about affection. So I think brand is something which becomes like a surname to you, that when I look at a particular brand, or when I hear about a particular brand, there's this kind of that emotion or that thought that triggers in my mind, that this is the value of it. So one should be able to resonate that value type with a brand. People aspire to work in many companies just for the brand, that because they love that brand, let's say Harley Davidson or Google or whichever. They would have probably never entered the stepped into the organization. They don't know anything about the work culture. They don't know how it will turn out to be for them, but it's their dream. They just work on it because they have developed a brand image of that organization, that it's a happy place for me to work, right? So, and these people, and the way you set up this brand image in people's mind, they are your brand custodians. Like when I'm talking about, with so much of passion about Tata or Apple or Cadbury, now I am an automatic brand custodian for them. If tomorrow, if I'm talking to any 3 to 4, 5 people, I will automatically suggest these names. It's like a free marketing, right? So, like for example, in my industry, I'm working in a B2B area in cybersecurity. I can do two things, right? Either I can create fear around cybersecurity, that there is a lot of fear, there are too many attacks happening, we are always at risk, this is what can happen with you and all that. On the other side, I can create awareness around it, right? That this can happen with you, this is how you can protect yourself, this is how we can help you, or be wary of these things. So I think it all depends on whether I want to make my brand a fearful brand, like a fearsome brand, and people might run away from me, or somebody who's making you, like, giving a problem, but I'm also trying to give you a solution around it. So I think as a marketer and as a consumer, I see brand is the value, which will, if you are able to create that, and some of the best and the biggest brands in the world have just done that. You talk about Subway, you talk about McDonald's, you talk about any brand. That's exactly what they have done, and they have done it and left it. If they don't do any marketing, any advertising now, nobody can still beat them.
Yeah, and one thing that I really liked about what you said is about brand and emotion, and about how a particular emotion is always, each brand has a particular emotion attached to it. So more than the company trying to sell their brand or trying to promote themselves, it's more of what reaction they're able to provoke from their potential consumers. And like you mentioned, Apple naturally it provides a sort of emotion of having class or luxury, and you have Cadbury, which is more of affection and sort of it takes you back to that nostalgic place. So I think that's a very sort of potent combination with brand and emotion.
Yeah.
Now,
In fact, let me just give you two another examples which were part of my MBA course study. So, like for example, the smaller part would just be, let's say, about Nike. So Nike is not about running, right? We know that when we wear the shoes, we are wearing it to run, right? But they promote, what are they promoting? They are not promoting the shoes, they're promoting the power to run, they're promoting that passion, right? So that's what Nike stands for. Just do it. Don't worry, whether what kind of shoes it is, the design. They don't talk about the aspects of the shoes. They only want to promote the power of running, the power of being active, energetic. So one of the other examples, which I've read it in one of the books, and it was a case study which was discussed with us during my MBA. There was this ad which was, it's pretty old, ad of Michael Jackson, where it was a Coke ad, and I think it was Coke, or yeah, I think it was Coke. So what was happening during this ad was that Michael Jackson, he never used to drink cola, because of the voice thing and stuff. So they thought of bringing him to the ad, and it was quite a debate that somebody who doesn't drink and who doesn't promote, what will be the fine, what will be the use of bringing him to the ad. But what happened, and what psychologists study, was that every time Michael Jackson appeared in front of the people, right, there was this, this kind of rage of energy and this thirst which used to get triggered inside every human being because of his performance, because of his music and whatever lyrics and everything as a combination. And we know that, right? We have been from the age of Michael Jackson. So what they did was they created that ad, and during the entire ad, he did not hold the brand, he did not hold the bottle, he did not drink it. Just during the time when the entire ad was almost about to end, and when you have psychologically observed that rage has been developed by an individual, they kind of pour down the Coke, and it automatically brings in that thirst inside you, as if I just want to run to the fridge and open up and have a Coke. So there was so much of science applied to that advertisement. And when we were told about this case study is the time I noticed that, oh yeah, he never even holded the bottle, and he never drank it. So so that is the power of resonating of a brand value into something. And that's how some of the brands have achieved very, very classic ads, and the value that they have left in the minds of an audience.
yeah, absolutely. And I think having like a keen understanding of human psychology and how the mind works is, I would say, the absolute most important part of any sort of marketing that you do, whether it's traditional advertising, or even if it's like a digital ad that you're running. I think having that keen understanding of how the human mind works is a huge part of this.
Correct.
So, now, Nidhi, moving slightly further, so we've noticed that there are two main paths to advertise to marketing, especially online marketing, which is paid online paid marketing versus organic marketing. Now, what are your thoughts on this, and what do you think? What type of marketing do you think brands, big or small, should utilize more for their growth? And how would you sort of sum this up?
I think Nesar, they both are important. I mean, there are no debates around which one is better. It all depends on the utility and the kind of usage that you put around both of them. So they both are important, and as the same time, they both are impactful as well. So the only thing is that one is, like I said, digital marketing is expensive, but it's faster. So that's the same thing, that paid marketing leads you to a faster route towards your goals. Organic marketing might, take more time, but at the same time, if you look at it, there might be a higher risk of authenticity as well. We have seen this on Facebook quite a lot, and it became a kind of lot of debate around it, that most of the followers on Facebook have, those are false profiles and fake followers. So there is this risk of having the authentic profiles as well. But at the same time, paid marketing can lead you to the customers faster as well. So organic and paid marketing has to be a very, very well balanced approach. I don't think the marketing, when you sit at the start of the year, you should sit down with a budget on the table and say, okay, let's fuse this much money here, fuse this much money here. You should do it in a progressive way and understand that what is my actual goal. What are my top 2 3 goals this year for marketing, and some of the things, if can be achieved organically by an impactful content and more personalization and maybe more effort, then let's do that. And if you really, really need authentic database to be built up, let's say Google Ads, so that's authentic. You can put in your money there. It can lead you to your B2B customers. So the proper balancing of both the practices, matching to the goals that you have, should be the right approach. It is not about fusing in the whole money that you get at the start of the year in that 1 year. It is about getting the right ROI. And paid marketing or organic, they both are related to some kind of an ROI, right? So, like giving our own example, we today on our LinkedIn handle, which is our prime focus at the moment, we have around 23.5 or like 24K followers. We have done this in just 8 9 months and purely organic. We have not spent a single penny on LinkedIn. Not that we cannot or we don't want to, but we wanted to first try out, like I said, we wanted to first set up our content buckets and utilize the best of our content, the impact that we can put. And entire follower base that we have is purely authentic and organic. That is the same reason our engagement rate is also very high. We have noticed, because we do a competitive analysis, so some of the large brands who have much higher, or let's say double than us, the followers, the engagement rate on their post or handle is much lower than ours. So, and the only reason for that is because we have all the authentic followers. So I think the genuine users, I mean that is, if you are able to capture them, that should be the key area. So at the same time, in favor of talking around paid marketing, it's not something that I'm trying to kind of build up a negative image around it. It really works in some of the areas. For example, Google Ads, retargeting is something which really works very well. I myself as a consumer has been retargeted so much on Instagram, and today I have actually become a loyal customer of many brands which I purely found on Instagram because of the sponsored content. So I searched something, it came up, and I was not aware of those brands at all. And to be really honest, I would have not probably come to know about that if they were organically putting up the content for me. So it really worked. So just to sum it up, I think know your goal, know your budget, have a balanced approach about it, and try to be sure that whatever ROI that you get is authentic. Just don't try to hit up a number, because then the engagement rate or the lead conversions will not happen to you.
And just to sort of dive into a particular thing that you mentioned with regards to your LinkedIn success over the past 9 months. So you mentioned you already have about 24,000 followers in a very short period of time. So for someone who's, let's say, a company who's just starting out and who wants to grow their following on LinkedIn, are there any key 3 or 4 pieces of advice that you would give them to improve their following primarily on LinkedIn as a platform?
Put up a lot of content. That's important. So you would not have the luxury to put up a content once in a week or something. So some of the practices that we followed was that initially for some time, it's not about flooding the content, but we kept on a kind of a proper cycle that we used to put up content every day, because we wanted our presence to be felt. So we were not flooding, we were not doing 2 3 posts every day, but yeah, we were consistently putting content without a break. Secondly, we kept on doing a lot of variety work, which we do till date. So we experimented with a lot of things. We did quiz, we did let's say polls, we ran around quick bites. So in the last 8 or 9 months, we have been trying to consistently, we have not settled down and we have not just taken the back seat. Okay, now we have this much followers and it keeps on growing just because it's startup. We are consistently doing brainstorming every month, that what is it that we keep doing to kind of create interesting content for the consumers. So this year, from April onwards, we started running monthly campaigns. So we identified what are the top key things which are running in the market in the cybersecurity space. Like for example, remote working. We are in a COVID situation. Everybody is working from home. In March and April, we were not really sure how long this is going to last. Are we going to go back or are we going to stay? But we know the time when we realized that this is going to stay for a while, we made up a campaign completely on remote working. So stay home, stay secure. So what we are doing is that we are trying to capture moment. Marketing is very, very critical for brands who are looking to grow, because if you look at right now, even COVID, initially everybody was talking about that, all the sad content about COVID is happening, this is what is there, which is, this is how it's breaking the businesses, economy, people, everything. People got bored with it because it got flooded. Now people have started to talk about the new normal. So the term changed. Now everybody is talking about the new normal, that okay, it's there, accepted. Now how do we survive? So people started to put a positive content. So I think that is something which startups or bigger organizations do have to keep in mind, that understand how the market is moving, and make your content interesting, authentic, and readable for audience, and put it in different formats. You cannot just keep flooding with heavy articles. Right now, if I go and phishing, like one of the attack types, which is a phishing attack, which is like a fake email in your mailbox, was one of the highest topics of cybersecurity. If you do type phishing, you might get flooded with phishing content. So I cannot be another contributor to writing another big article on phishing. I might be creating a small piece of video. I might be creating an infographic. I can create an article as well. So you have to keep the variety and follow the market, and put up a consistency around your content. And I'm definitely sure, I mean, you will get results. And yes, one of the important points also is that use your internal brand custodians. So initially we used to push our own employees a lot to share our content. So if I have, let's say, 50 people, if I'm putting up a post and even out of that 25 people share it on their handles, even let's say out of my 5 posts, they share 2 posts, that's an organic marketing which I've done. So that is something which also you can utilize internally. It will work faster than the paid marketing for you.
Yeah, and I agree with sort of the topic you mentioned about how you're putting out different pieces of content, not just sticking to one type like videos or text. Because
Yeah.
I've also sort of come across a few articles, and I've read that all the algorithms of most of these social media platforms, not just LinkedIn but Instagram, Facebook, and all of these, they favor the type of content which is utilizing their additional features. Let's say Instagram or LinkedIn comes up with a new feature. If more people adopt these features at an earlier stage, the algorithm naturally pushes the reach of those content pieces of content more than others. So I think that's the reason why people, and like you also rightly suggested, that don't just stick to one type of content, experiment with as many as you can and see what works for you, and be consistent. So those are sort of the main takeaways that you've given us.
Yeah.
Now,
And also to add, just adding there, Nisa, that also use other platforms to make people reach there. Like what we do right now is we do email marketing as well, right? So when we do email marketing, even in that, the same content. Let's say we put up a very good article on let's say fishing. So what we will be doing is that whenever we do an email marketing, we direct that traffic also to our article on LinkedIn. So and there are many other ways. If you have a website, there's backlinking, SEO, we are all aware of it, right? So I will not deep dive into that, but you can try to use the content syndication platforms, which are relevant and which are quite popular, like Tumblr or Quora, and share your content there, and that traffic will also get directed towards your social media handles. So utilize those strategies to mass spread your content, and then either bring it back to your website if that's your goal, but if social media is your goal, then bring audience back to your platform utilizing these handles as well.
yeah. So Nidhi, I think you're just stuck in the screen. Just a second.
Oh,
Yeah, okay, no, you're back. You're back now. Yeah,
uh,
I could. You were
could
audible
you
then.
hear me what I
Yeah,
said?
I could hear you. You were audible. It's just your video.
Okay.
Great. So, Nidhi, just to take the call, I know we covered LinkedIn marketing right now, but slightly go back to the conversation about organic marketing versus paid marketing. Also, now we're seeing that due to COVID and tough economic conditions right now, a lot of companies have reduced their marketing budgets. Now, for them to really carry out their marketing activities right now and really let's not talk about growing, but at least to survive in this condition right now, what sort of techniques you think they can adopt, and with reduced budgets that they're going to be working with right now, what do you think they can do to leverage their marketing efforts?
So I think it's something similar to what I've just previously discussed, as well as that you set up your goal. So fortunate or unfortunate, I think the COVID situation came to us just at the start of the financial year. So the budgets were released, but then we were told to either cut it down or use them very rationally, right? So the goal shifting didn't kind of really happen. But the only thing that we have differently done is that we have kind of planned out the ROI against it in a very calculated manner. So even if I have a budget, I would rather not follow the herd and just spend it. I would make a very effective use of it. And right now we are seeing that when we are saying that what is the shift in marketing during COVID? To be honest, there is no shift in marketing during COVID, right? The only thing is that some of the things have been completely taken out from the marketing piece, which is primarily the traditional marketing. We are not able to do on ground events. We are not able to advertise the way we can on the ground. But otherwise, the digital marketing piece has kind of not really shifted. The advertisements, the ad industry hasn't really got impacted. The physical movement of the marketing piece has kind of shifted. So at the start of the year, we used to have around 5 to 6 events that we either used to, kind of organize or used to participate in, and we had a budget around it. Now that part is kind of gone out of my picture. Now, in relation to that, I still have to reach my audience, right? I'm not just talking about putting up a content. I still want to do a face-to-face conversation. I want to interact with my potential customers. So webinar is one. Podcast, relatively new, not being too popular, not getting the real worth of it. But webinars is something that, we have consistently started doing. We are trying to do our own webinars, or we are trying to do partner webinars. Now, even in webinars, we got really flooded. During the time, it became a kind of so much of webinars were happening that people started to get bored up, because attending a webinar, it can be everybody, but then participation in a webinar can still be those limited thought leaders. So, that became a little challenge. But I think with the marketing budgets being slashed out or reduced, you should rather try to have a very, very calculated ROI that puts your efforts towards something I mentioned previously, towards the organic marketing. There is a lot that you can do in terms of organic marketing. Do more brainstorming, put up those creative hats. I think you probably heard about putting up the creative hat
Yeah.
and all that. Was yeah. So I was just saying that, you will have to push up the effort. I mean, we are in the same boat, right? All our traditional marketing budget has been slashed out. Even in digital marketing, we have the budget to put on LinkedIn, but we are still not trying to drive it. We are trying to utilize the quality of the content by running campaigns, by putting up interesting content, and we are mass spreading it across all the content syndication platforms. So apart from being on traditional platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, or let's say Facebook, Insta, we are at the moment utilizing around 10 to 10, 12 content syndication platforms, like actively being answerable on Quora or Tumblr, so that our audience reach is increasing consistently, right? Because that is one of our goals. Now, the second goal is to have a direct interaction with our audience. Like we want to generate business. So we need to talk to the CISOs and the CIOs. So we are trying to do webinars, right? Whether we can do our own webinar, or let's say an organization like Gilda, why not get in touch with somebody like a third party and have an interactive webinar, which will put you in direct contact with the audience. So I think you will have to adapt to the situation and adopt. There is no way of sitting down and complaining that my budget has been slashed out. It is in fact an interesting time to put up the creative hat, do something interesting.
Yeah, and one of the new creative avenues that are opening up for marketers, and something that you also briefly touched upon right now, was podcasts. So, where do you see this evolving into? So, podcasts are sort of like an unheard of thing, maybe like, 5, 6 years ago, and not that into the mainstream. But now we have so many people running huge podcasts, and a lot of these podcasts are actually having more reach than the mainstream news networks right now. So
Right.
these people are coming with massive reach, and marketers have an ability to tap into a huge audience. So how do you see this evolving, and what sort of business models do you see arising out of podcasts?
So to be very honest, we have kind of not really experimented a lot over it, and but that's part of our agenda for this year. We have been exploring, webinar and podcast channels both, either on our own or in collaboration. I think podcast it's a very good mechanism to again reach out to your audience, something which has probably not got its real worth. Maybe in the Indian market as such. I have observed this happening a lot while my stay in the in Dubai or otherwise. I think in international market, podcast is something that's been used a lot. But in India, I've not really seen that happening a lot. Maybe my personal opinion. Like even in during this time of my marketing journey, I have never received an invite to attend a podcast. It's all being flooded about webinars. So I think that's a very good avenue to be explored further. And I remember I attended a webinar a few weeks back with some of the top industry, leading marketers from very big brands. And one of the CMOs out there, she very interestingly mentioned that I've started to enjoy the podcast, just being played in the background while I'm working in the kitchen. So I think podcast is something that really needs to be explored, and it still has the potential, but it's not getting that real worth, probably like because people of like us are not really utilizing it to the maximum extent. But now, even when we talk about webinar, many of the engagements are shifting from the traditional laptop to the mobile. Many of our Zoom meetings are happening on mobile. So I think with that shift happening more, podcast might really get the attention, because that's where the tool lies. I don't really see people sitting on a laptop listening to a podcast. Like in my mobile, most of the content applications, even for example TEDx, I am a very good avid user of TEDx. So instead of opening up it on a laptop full screen on, or I like to quickly watch it over my mobile. So I think the more consumer shift of now, trying to interact and even attend meetings on mobile, Zoom and all, the podcast might really come up. So that area should really be explored.
Interesting. I completely agree. So, especially the anecdote you gave about the CMO mentioning about how she consumes podcasts in the kitchen. So
Yeah.
that's also something I've observed personally. Where if obviously prior to lockdown, but while I was driving to work, I used to consume podcasts, and usually when I'm doing something else, because it's a very easy form of content to consume for people. You don't have to given your entire full attention. Like if you're watching a webinar or if you're watching a video, it requires your attention. But podcasts are something that can be consumed very easily, and I think that's one of the main reasons, especially in today's day and age, it's sort of taking off to a whole new level. And we've
Yeah.
seen.
And I think it's been more targeted to the B2C market. Like, I don't know how to use Spotify. Now,
Yeah.
Spotify is another where, a lot of podcasts are being pushed now regarding cricket conversations and all. So I think podcasts have initially or traditionally so far being used more for the B2C kind of content. B2B market is not really exploring
Yeah.
it more. Like I imagining me listening a cybersecurity conversation over podcast sound not too interesting, but listening a cricket conversation might. So I think that transition, if happens in a smooth manner, people would really start to enjoy even podcasts for B2B.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Spotify, they've announced some huge deals with some independent podcasters.
Yes, yes,
I'm sure you would have heard there's a huge podcast called the Joe Rogan Experience, and he
right,
signed
right,
$100 million licensing deal to Spotify for 3 years. So it
correct,
shows the evolution of podcasts, and who knows where it's going to go in the future.
correct, absolutely.
Yeah, so Nidhi, I think we've covered a lot and you've shared some great insights with us. So, as like a final takeaway to anyone watching this, what message would you leave to any marketers right now, or any aspiring marketers, or even just people who are looking to build up their personal brand, like we spoke about? So, what two or three pieces of advice would you leave for them?
So let me give you five. Okay. So, and it's probably something that I've already talked about throughout the time. One is that the content and consumer is king. You cannot change that rule ever, right? So that has to be the ground rule. Personalization and interactive content is very, very important. You can run away from it for a while, but it is something that will make you stand out and last. Third would be don't be everywhere. There is no need to be everywhere. Be only on relevant platforms that you need. So don't follow the herd. Don't just get a like look at right now. TikTok is closed and everybody's wondering. So don't be everywhere. Just be wherever you really need to be. Follow the trend. It's very important. Just don't sit with a close eye. Even as a personal branding person, if you know there is a new feature coming up, like Twitter came up with fleets, so I was one of those initial people trying to fleet and figure out what it is. So follow the trend. That's very, very important. And the last thing is that remember, marketing is an art. Everything else is a skill. So when marketing is an art, you have to do it with passion. There is no run from that.
And just so the first quote that you mentioned about content is king, I've seen an alteration to that quote quite recently. Actually, it's called "Content isn't the king, but it's the entire kingdom." So that was like I saw recently, and I found that quite. So
Correct.
great. So Nidhi, thank you so much for taking an entire hour out of your day and sharing some great insights with us. And we hope we can do this again with you sometime soon.
Sure. Thanks, Issa. It was really interesting to break out from the day-to-day work, during the lockdown and have some deep dive into marketing concepts. So it's really good. I hope it's helpful for anybody who sees it. And yeah, let's stay connected and do more of it. Yeah.
Definitely. So this entire video will be put up on all our social media handles, and you can also choose to book a session with Nidhi if you have any questions about marketing, branding, advertising, anything that you feel is of importance to you. You can visit gilla360.com and go on Nidhi's profile. So, thank you, Nidhi. Hope you had a good time, and
You too.
let's see. Great.
Sure.
Take
And
care.
stay safe, everybody. Take
You too.
care.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.